Bruises don't stay hidden forever. Sometimes they choose the one person powerful enough to notice. Claire Dawson heard the thought in her own mind as she stood beneath the harsh fluorescent lights of Harper's Market, tugging the sleeve of her grey sweater lower over her wrist. The store was nearly empty at 9:45 on a Tuesday night. A floor buffer hummed near the bakery. Rain tapped against the wide front windows. Somewhere above the frozen food aisle, an old speaker played a country song too softly for anyone to recognize. Claire kept her eyes on the grocery list folded in her palm. Milk, bread, coffee, apples. Nothing complicated. Nothing that should have made her hands shake. But the purple mark beneath her sleeve pulsed whenever she tightened her grip on the shopping cart. Ethan had not meant to hurt her. That was what he always said afterward. He had been tired. He had been worried. She had pushed too hard. She had tried to leave when he was still talking. Every explanation placed the blame gently back into her hands, as if she had chosen the shape of his anger. Claire stopped beside a display of canned soup and forced herself to breathe. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. She had learned the rhythm from a counselor whose number she had never been brave enough to call twice. Tonight, she told herself, she only needed groceries. Then she would go home, lock the door, and ignore Ethan's messages until morning. Her phone vibrated inside her coat pocket. She did not need to look. The sound alone tightened something in her chest. She pushed the cart toward produce. A man stood near the apples, tall enough to make the stacked crates look smaller around him. He wore a charcoal overcoat over a dark suit, the kind of clothing that seemed too precise for a neighborhood grocery store. His black hair was brushed back neatly, and silver touched one temple beneath the overhead light. He held a single green apple in one hand, studying it with the concentration of someone making a decision that mattered. Claire would have passed without looking again if 2 other men had not been waiting near the end of the aisle. Both wore dark coats. Both watched the room instead of the shelves. Security, she thought, or government, or trouble. She lowered her gaze and reached for a plastic produce bag. It refused to open. Her fingers were too cold, too unsteady. She rubbed the edges together, growing more frustrated with every failed attempt. Then the man beside her spoke. Here. His voice was quiet, low, controlled. He took another bag from the roll, separated the opening with one effortless motion and handed it to her. Claire looked up. His eyes were dark brown, almost black beneath the fluorescent lights. They did not move over her. He was searching for something to criticize. They simply held hers, patient, unreadable. "Thank you," she said. She reached for the bag, and her sleeve slid back. Only an inch, maybe 2, enough. His gaze dropped to the fading marks around her wrist. The change in his expression was small, so small that another person might have missed it. His jaw tightened. The apple stopped turning in his hand. Silence settled between them, heavy enough to drown out the floor buffer and the rain. Claire pulled her sleeve down. "I bumped into a cabinet." The lie came too quickly. His eyes returned to her face. He did not challenge her. That made it worse. People usually accepted the explanation because accepting it was easier than asking what they would have to do if she told the truth. This man looked as though he had heard every lie people told to survive. "Cabinets leave strange fingerprints," he said. Claire's breath caught. There was no accusation in his tone, no pity, only certainty. She looked toward the registers. The nearest cashier was a teenage boy staring at his phone. The 2 men at the end of the aisle had not moved, but she felt their attention sharpen. "I'm fine," Claire whispered. The stranger set the apple back on the display. "No," he said, "you're practiced." The words landed harder than anger would have. Claire gripped the cart. "You don't know me. That's true." His gaze flicked once toward the phone vibrating again inside her pocket. "But I know fear when it learns a routine." Claire stepped back. Her heel struck the cartwheel with a soft metallic click. Instantly, one of the men near the aisle shifted forward. The stranger lifted 2 fingers without looking at him. The man stopped. Power moved through the gesture without effort. Claire felt it then, not as a threat but as a fact. This was someone people obeyed before he raised his voice. "Who are you?" she asked. He considered the question. Dominic Morello. The name meant nothing to her at first. Then she remembered a local news story about Morello Development buying 3 abandoned blocks near the river. There had been photographs of black cars, city officials, and a man who never smiled for cameras. Her pulse quickened. Dominic glanced at the contents of her cart. Coffee, bread, 1 frozen dinner. "You live alone?" Claire's fear returned sharply. "That's none of your business." Something almost like approval passed through his eyes. "Good answer." He reached into his coat and placed a plain white business card beside the apples. No company logo, no title, only his name and a phone number. "Keep it. I don't need help." Most people who need it say that first. Claire left the card where it was. She pushed the cart away, forcing herself not to hurry. At the end of the aisle, she looked back despite herself. Dominic Morello was no longer studying the apples. He was watching her disappear toward the checkout, his face calm and his eyes colder than the rain outside. Her phone vibrated again. This time she looked. Ethan's message contained only 6 words. "I'm outside. We need to talk." Claire stopped breathing. Through the front windows, beneath the yellow parking lot lights, she saw his truck idling beside her car. When she turned back toward the produce aisle, Dominic was gone, and the white business card had vanished with him. Claire stood beneath the buzzing lights near the checkout lane, staring through the rain streaked glass at Ethan's truck. Its headlights were off, but the engine was running. A thin ribbon of exhaust curled into the cold night air. He sat behind the wheel with both hands resting on top of it, perfectly still. That frightened her more than shouting ever had. Ethan was most dangerous when he looked calm. Her phone vibrated again. "Come outside." Claire locked the screen and slipped the phone into her coat pocket. The teenage cashier scanned her bread without looking up. "Do you need bags?" he asked. Claire glanced toward the produce aisle. Dominic Morello had disappeared. So had the 2 men who had been watching the store. For one irrational second, she wondered whether she had imagined them. Then she remembered Dominic's voice. "You are practiced?" The cashier repeated his question. "Yes," she said. "Please." Her groceries fit into 2 paper bags. She paid, lifted them against her chest, and walked toward the exit because standing inside forever was not a plan. The automatic doors opened with a mechanical sigh. Cold rain touched her face. Ethan's driver's side door opened before Claire reached the curb. He stepped out wearing the navy jacket she had bought him last Christmas. The one he had complained was too plain. His sandy hair was damp at the edges. To anyone watching, he looked tired and concerned. Ethan had always been good at looking reasonable in public. "You blocked me," he said. Claire tightened her hold on the grocery bags. "I told you not to come to my apartment. I did not come to your apartment." His smile appeared without warmth. "I came here." She looked toward the store. The cashier had already returned to his phone. The parking lot held only a handful of cars. Rain whispered against the pavement, soft enough to make the whole place feel abandoned. "Move your truck," Claire said. "You are blocking my car." Ethan took 1 step closer. "We need to settle this. 3 years is not nothing." His voice remained low, but Claire heard the strain beneath it. "You do not get to erase me because you had one bad night. One bad night." The phrase almost made her laugh. Instead, she looked at the pale mark across his knuckles and felt her stomach turn. "I am going home," she said. Ethan reached for one of the grocery bags. Claire stepped back so quickly that a carton shifted inside. "Do not act afraid of me, then stop giving me reasons." The words escaped before she could stop them. Silence followed. Ethan stared at her as if she had broken an agreement neither of them had spoken aloud. Claire had always softened her sentences around him. She had learned to remove sharp edges, to apologize before disagreeing, to turn her own pain into something easier for him to hear. Tonight, beneath the grocery store lights, she was too tired to make herself smaller. A black sedan turned slowly into the parking lot. Ethan glanced toward it. The car did not approach them. It rolled past the entrance, continued to the far end of the lot, and stopped beneath a broken street lamp. Its windows were dark. Claire could not see who sat inside. Ethan saw it too. His attention stayed fixed on the sedan for several seconds. When he looked back at Claire, some of his confidence had drained away. "Who were you talking to in there?" he asked. "No one. Do not lie to me. You do not get to question me anymore." The sedan's headlights came on. Ethan flinched. It was small, almost invisible, but Claire noticed. He stepped away from her and shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. "This is not over. It is for me." Claire walked around him. Each step felt uncertain until she reached her car. She placed the bags on the passenger seat, locked the doors, and started the engine. Ethan remained beside his truck, watching the black sedan instead of her. Claire drove away without looking back again. Her apartment was less than 2 miles from the store, but she took 3 wrong turns and checked her mirror at every stoplight. Ethan did not follow, neither did the sedan. By the time she reached her building, rain had soaked through the shoulders of her coat. She carried the groceries upstairs, locked the door, slid the chain into place, and pushed a kitchen chair beneath the knob. At 11:32, her phone lit up with a call from Ethan. She let it ring. At 11:47, another call came from an unknown number. She ignored that too. Then 1 o'clock. Claire sat on the edge of her couch with every lamp turned on, waiting for footsteps in the hallway. None came. At 2:16, she finally opened Ethan's last message. It had been sent from the grocery store parking lot. "Who is Dominic Morello?" Claire read the name twice. Before she could decide what it meant, a new notification appeared. This one was from Ethan's sister. "Claire, have you heard from him? His truck is here, but he is gone." Claire stared at the screen while the refrigerator hummed behind her. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city seemed to be holding its breath. Somewhere across town, Ethan had vanished between one message and the next, and the only name he had left behind was Dominic Morello's. Claire did not sleep. By sunrise, the lamps in her apartment had turned the room into a pale imitation of daylight, and the untouched groceries still sat on the kitchen counter. Ethan's sister had sent 4 more messages. The first asked whether they had argued. The second said his phone was going straight to voicemail. The third said the police would not file a missing person report yet because he was an adult and had only been gone a few hours. The fourth contained 2 words that made Claire's stomach tighten: "Call me." She placed the phone face down and stared at the locked door. Every sound in the hallway made her shoulders stiffen. A neighbor leaving for work, pipes knocking inside the wall, the elevator opening and closing 3 floors below. None of it was Ethan, but her body did not seem to understand the difference. At 7:20, someone knocked. 3 measured taps, not loud, not hurried. Claire froze beside the couch. The knock came again. "Miss Dawson," a man called through the door. The voice was unfamiliar. "My name is Daniel Price. I am with Morello Development." Claire's eyes moved to the chair wedged beneath the doorknob. She did not answer. "Mr. Morello asked me to deliver something. Dominic." The name seemed to darken the room. Claire walked quietly to the door and looked through the peephole. A man in his early 40s stood in the hallway wearing a dark wool coat. His hands were visible. He held a small white envelope. No one stood behind him. "Leave it on the floor," she said. Daniel did not react to the fear in her voice. "Of course." He set the envelope against the wall and stepped back. "Mr. Morello also asked me to tell you that no one will enter this building without your permission." Claire gripped the edge of the door. "What does that mean?" "It means you are safe here. Where is Ethan?" A pause followed. "Not long, but long enough." "I do not know a man named Ethan." The answer was smooth, too smooth. "Tell Dominic Morello that I want the truth." Daniel inclined his head toward the closed door as though she had spoken to him face to face. "I will deliver the message." His footsteps faded toward the elevator. Claire waited until she heard the doors close before removing the chair. She opened the door only far enough to grab the envelope. Inside was the white business card from the grocery store. Her name had been written on the back in black ink, along with a second phone number. Beneath it were 6 words. "Use this line if you are afraid." No explanation, no apology. Claire carried the card to the kitchen and set it beside the cold carton of milk. The gesture should have comforted her. Instead, it felt like proof that Dominic knew where she lived, knew what frightened her, and had people waiting to obey him before most of the city had poured its first cup of coffee. At 8:15, Claire called Ethan's sister. Megan answered before the first ring ended. "Where is he?" Her voice sounded raw. "I do not know." His truck was left at Harper's Market. His keys were in the cup holder. His wallet was on the seat. Claire closed her eyes. "Did the police check the cameras?" "They said they would." "Claire, what happened last night?" "He came to talk to me." "Did you leave together?" "No." "Was someone else there?" Dominic's face rose in Claire's mind, the apple motionless in his hand, the calm certainty in his eyes. There was a man inside the store. Megan went silent. "What man?" Before Claire could answer, a heavy knock sounded at the apartment door. "Miss Dawson," a woman called. "Detective Laura Bennett with the city police." Claire's pulse stumbled. Megan heard it through the phone. "Are the police there? I have to go." "Claire." "Do not hang up." She ended the call. Detective Bennett stood outside with a uniformed officer. Her badge was raised near the peephole. Claire removed the chair and opened the door with the chain still attached. Bennett was in her late 30s, with tired blue eyes and rain darkening the shoulders of her tan coat. "We need to ask you about Ethan Cole," Claire swallowed. "Is he hurt?" "We do not know." Bennett glanced at the chain. "May we come in 10 minutes later?" Claire sat at her kitchen table while the officer took notes near the window. Bennett placed a printed photograph between them. It showed Ethan's truck beneath the grocery store lights. Beside it stood the black sedan. The image was grainy, but the license plate was clear. "Do you recognize this vehicle?" Bennett asked. "No. It belongs to a company controlled by Dominic Morello." Claire looked toward the business card beside the milk. Bennett followed her gaze. The room seemed to narrow around that small piece of paper. How do you know, Mr. Morello? She asked. Claire wanted to lie. She wanted to protect herself from whatever answer would come next, but she remembered Dominic's words, fear when it learns a routine. I met him last night, she said. Bennett's expression changed. At the grocery store? Claire nodded. He saw my wrist. The detective's eyes lowered to Claire's sleeve, and after that, nothing. Miss Dawson, the store cameras show Mr. Morello speaking to Ethan in the parking lot after you drove away. Cold moved through Claire's chest. For how long? Less than 2 minutes forward. Then Ethan entered the black sedan voluntarily. Claire stared at the photograph. Voluntarily did not mean safely. It did not mean innocent. It only meant Ethan had opened the door himself. Where did the car go? She asked. Bennett's gaze held hers. That is what we are trying to determine. Claire looked again at the business card, at the number Dominic had told her to use if she was afraid. Her hand moved toward it before she had decided what to do once. Then his voice answered, quiet and awake, Claire. She gripped the card so tightly its edge pressed into her palm. What did you do? Silence filled the line. When Dominic finally spoke, there was no surprise in his voice. I gave him a choice. Detective Bennett watched Claire without blinking. What choice? Claire whispered. Dominic exhaled slowly. The kind that only works once. Claire's fingers tightened around the phone until the plastic case pressed into her palm. Detective Bennett watched her from across the kitchen table, one hand resting beside the printed photograph. The uniformed officer had stopped writing. Even the refrigerator seemed quieter. Put him on speaker, Bennett said. Claire hesitated, then tapped the screen. Dominic's voice filled the small apartment. You are not alone. It was not a question. Claire looked at the detective. The police are here. A brief silence followed. Detective, Dominic asked. Bennett leaned closer. Mr. Morello, where is Ethan Cole? Safe. The answer came without hesitation. That is not a location. It is the only fact that matters this morning. Bennett's expression hardened. A man is missing. Your vehicle collected him from a parking lot. You will tell me where he went. Dominic remained calm. He entered willingly. You knew we had the camera footage. I assumed you would do your job. Claire closed her eyes. Every word made the room feel colder. Dominic, she said, his voice softened only slightly. To leave you alone, that is not a choice, that is a demand. Some demands are overdue. Bennett reached for the phone. But Claire pulled it close, she asked. I cannot tell you yet. Then I cannot trust you. The silence on the line changed. It was still controlled, but Claire heard something beneath it, something almost human. Regret, perhaps, or recognition. You should not trust me because I ask. Dominic said, you should decide after you know the truth. Then tell me, not while someone else is listening. Bennett shook her head. Do not meet him alone. Dominic heard her. She will not be alone. That does not reassure me, Bennett replied. It was not. The call ended. Claire stared at the dark screen. Bennett leaned back slowly. That man does not make casual promises. Is that supposed to comfort me? No, it is supposed to make you careful. The detective gathered the photographs but left her card on the table. Do not go anywhere with him. Do not destroy any messages. If he contacts you again, call me first. Claire looked at the business card from Dominic beside Bennett's card. 2 names, 2 kinds of authority. And after the police left, Claire locked the door and stood in the kitchen without moving. At 10:15, she called work and said she was sick. At 10:30, Megan called again. Claire let it ring. At 11, someone slid an envelope beneath her door. She waited several minutes before picking it up. Inside was a photocopy of a bus ticket purchased under Ethan's name. Departure time 3:45 that morning. Destination Cleveland. A handwritten note beneath it read, he left the city by choice. Claire read the sentence 3 times. The ticket proved almost nothing. Anyone could have purchased it. Anyone with enough money could have arranged it. She called Dominic's private number. He answered immediately. Did you send this? Yes. Why Cleveland? Because it was far enough. Far enough from what? From you. Claire paced to the window. The street below was wet and silver beneath the late morning sun. A delivery truck blocked half the lane. A woman in a red coat walked a terrier along the sidewalk. Everything looked normal, which felt insulting. You cannot move people around like pieces on a board, Claire said. I did not move him. I showed him what staying would cost. Her stomach tightened. It means I knew things about him that he did not want made public. What things? Debt, false names, money he took from people who trusted him. Claire pressed her forehead against the cool window glass. Ethan had always hidden his phone. He had borrowed cash and never explained why. Once, she had found a collection notice in the trash with a name she did not recognize. She had believed his explanation because believing was easier. You investigated him overnight? I had already heard his name before last night. Claire turned from the window. Why? Dominic paused. Because Ethan Cole owes money to men who do not forgive easily. The apartment suddenly felt smaller. Are those men connected to you? No. Are you certain? Yes. The firmness in his voice left no room for doubt. Then why help him? She asked. I did not help him. Dominic's voice lowered. I removed him from your path before someone else used him to reach you. Claire sat down slowly. Reach me for what? Leverage. The word carried no drama. That made it worse. You are saying I was in danger before you ever saw me. I am saying Ethan was already standing near a fire. Last night he tried to pull you closer. Claire looked at the chair beneath her door handle. Because he recognized the car, and then he got inside willingly. Yes. Why? Because he knew I had proof. Claire swallowed. Proof of what? Another pause. That he had been using your address for deliveries tied to stolen financial records. The room tilted. Claire thought of the packages Ethan had once asked her to hold. Plain brown boxes, no return address. He had said they were computer parts for a friend. You are lying. Check the top shelf of your hall closet. Claire stood so quickly the chair scraped the floor. She carried the phone to the narrow hallway and opened the closet. Coats hung in a crowded row. On the top shelf sat an old shoebox she had not touched in months. She pulled it down. Inside were 3 unopened envelopes addressed to names she did not know, all at her apartment. Beneath them lay a small flash drive wrapped in a receipt from a shipping store. Claire's breathing turned shallow. Do not plug it into anything, Dominic said. How did you know it was there? Ethan told me. Why would he tell you? Because I gave him 2 options. Cooperate and leave, or stay and explain everything to the police before the people searching for those records found him. Claire stared at the envelopes. So he chose the bus. And where is he now? By this afternoon, he will be with a federal contact who can keep him alive long enough to testify. Claire closed her eyes. The truth did not feel like relief. It felt like another locked door. Detective Bennett said not to meet you. She is right. That answer startled her. Then why are you protecting me? Because the people looking for that drive do not know Ethan is gone yet. A car door slammed outside. Claire looked through the narrow window beside the fire escape. A grey sedan had stopped across the street. 2 men sat inside, facing her building. Dominic, she whispered, there is a car outside. His voice changed instantly, still quiet, no longer gentle. Step away from the window. Claire moved back. Do you know them? I know who sent them. What should I do? Take Bennett's card. Take the flash drive. Leave everything else. Footsteps sounded in the hallway beyond her apartment door. Slow, deliberate. 1 floor below, the elevator bell chimed. Where am I going? Claire asked. Dominic answered without pause. Somewhere they cannot reach you. Claire slipped Detective Bennett's card into her coat pocket and closed her hand around the flash drive. The footsteps in the hallway stopped outside her apartment. No knock followed, no voice called her name. The silence felt deliberate, as though whoever stood beyond the door expected fear to make the first move. Dominic, she whispered into the phone. Someone is here. Go to the bathroom, he said. Lock the door and stay away from the window. Claire moved quietly across the apartment, but the old floorboards betrayed every step with a soft creak. She reached the bathroom, turned the lock, and pressed her back against the wall. The small room smelled faintly of lavender soap and damp towels. Her reflection in the mirror looked pale and unfamiliar. I cannot hide in here forever. You will not have to. What are you doing? Sending help? Your people? Yes. A light tap sounded at the apartment door, then another, polite, patient. Claire held her breath. Miss Dawson, a man called from the hallway. Building maintenance. We received a report about a water leak. Claire looked toward the bathroom ceiling. The pipes were silent. There is no leak, she said under her breath. Dominic heard her. Do not answer them. The man outside knocked again. Miss Dawson, we need to check the kitchen line. Claire's phone vibrated against her ear as another call tried to come through. Detective Bennett. The police are calling, Claire whispered. Answer her. What about you? Keep this line open. Claire switched calls. Detective, Claire, where are you? Bennett's voice was urgent. Inside my apartment. There are men outside my door. Do not open it. Officers are on the way. Bennett paused. You called him first? Claire looked at the flash drive in her palm. He knew they were coming. The doorknob moved once, slowly. The chair beneath it scraped across the floor but held. Claire's heart struck hard against her ribs. They are trying the door. Bennett's voice sharpened. Go to a room with a lock. I am in the bathroom. Stay there. Do you have another exit? Claire glanced toward the narrow window above the bathtub. It opened onto the fire escape, but the drop to the alley was 3 stories. Only the fire escape. Do not use it unless I tell you. A sudden sound came from the apartment entrance. Not breaking wood, not shattered glass, just the dull pressure of someone testing what stood between them and the room. Claire stared at the bathroom door. Dominic's line remained connected in the background. She could hear his quiet breathing through the phone. Then another voice reached her from the hallway. Step away from the door. Daniel Price. Claire recognized him immediately. The silence outside changed. Several footsteps shifted. One man said something too low for her to understand. Daniel answered with the same calm tone he had used that morning. This building is private property. You have been asked to leave. We are maintenance, the stranger replied. No, Daniel said. You are not. Claire pressed the phone closer. No shouting followed. No crash. Only a tense silence, then the sound of shoes retreating toward the elevator. A moment later, the elevator bell chimed. Bennett was still speaking. Claire, are they inside? No. Someone sent by Dominic stopped them. Do not open the door yet. Red and blue light flickered through the bathroom window. Sirens approached, then cut off below the building. Claire waited until Bennett confirmed that uniformed officers had reached her floor. When she unlocked the bathroom, 2 officers stood inside the apartment with Daniel near the entrance. The chair had shifted several inches, but the lock remained intact. Daniel's gaze went briefly to Claire's closed fist. He knew she had found the flash drive. That knowledge unsettled her almost as much as the men who had left. Detective Bennett arrived less than 5 minutes later. She entered quickly, checked the hallway, then faced Daniel. Who were they? Employees of a private security contractor, he said. Which contractor? One that does not officially exist. Bennett did not appreciate the answer. You will come downtown and explain that more clearly. Daniel remained composed. I will cooperate within the limits of my attorney's advice. Claire stepped between them before she understood why. They wanted the drive. Bennett looked at her hand. What drive? Claire opened her fingers. The black device looked harmless beneath the kitchen light. Bennett took an evidence bag from her pocket. Give it to me. Dominic's voice came through the phone, still connected. Do not. Everyone in the room heard him. Bennett's eyes dropped to the screen. Mr. Morello, interfering with evidence is a serious matter. So is handing compromised records to the wrong person. Bennett's face tightened. Are you accusing my department? I am telling Claire that Ethan did not hide that drive from criminals. He hid it from someone wearing a badge. The apartment became completely still. Claire looked at Bennett, searching her expression for surprise, anger, anything that would tell her where the truth ended. Who? Claire asked. Dominic did not answer immediately. A detective named Paul Mercer. Bennett's color changed. It was slight, but Claire saw it. Mercer is my supervisor, she said. Dominic's voice remained steady, and he was the first person Ethan called after entering my car. Claire looked down at the flash drive. Suddenly, every safe choice had a shadow behind it. What do I do with this? She asked. Bennett held out the evidence bag again, but her hand was no longer she could. Bring it to a federal office yourself. You expect me to walk into a federal building with stolen records? Not alone. With you? No. The answer surprised her. With Detective Bennett if she is willing to risk her career by doing the right thing. Bennett stared at the phone. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then she lowered the evidence bag. The federal building is 8 blocks from here, she said. My car is downstairs. Claire studied her face. Can I trust you? Bennett looked toward the open apartment door, where 2 officers waited in the hall, then back at the drive. I do not know, she said quietly, but you should not trust anyone who answers that question too quickly. Claire slipped the flash drive into her pocket. Daniel stepped aside to clear the path. As she passed him, he spoke softly. Mr. Morello asked me to give you one message. Claire stopped. What message? Daniel looked toward the stairwell, where morning light cut across the grey walls. The danger is not that Ethan disappeared, he said. The danger is that someone powerful expected him to stay silent. Claire followed Detective Bennett into the hallway, with the flash drive secured inside her coat pocket. Daniel remained beside the apartment door while the 2 uniformed officers checked the stairwell. The building smelled of wet concrete and old paint. Somewhere below them, a radio crackled, followed by the heavy closing of the front entrance. Bennett pressed the elevator button, then reconsidered and pointed toward the stairs. Claire understood without asking. An elevator was a locked metal box with one exit. The stairwell gave them choices. They descended 3 floors beneath cold fluorescent lights. their footsteps echoing between the walls. Bennett kept one hand near her coat pocket, not threatening, only prepared. Claire kept thinking about Paul Mercer. She had never met him, yet his name had entered her apartment like smoke, invisible, difficult to escape. At the lobby window, Bennett stopped. A dark blue sedan waited at the curb. Her unmarked police vehicle sat 20 feet behind it. "That car was not there when I arrived," she said. Claire looked through the rain-speckled glass. The driver wore a baseball cap pulled low. He did not turn toward them. "I do not know." Bennett removed her phone and called a number from memory. No one answered. She tried again. "Who are you calling?" Claire asked. "My partner." "Can you trust him?" Bennett lowered the phone. Yesterday I would have said yes. The honesty frightened Claire more than reassurance would have. Bennett guided her through a side door and across a narrow courtyard behind the building. A patrol car waited in the alley with a young officer behind the wheel. Bennett opened the rear door for Claire. "We are not using my car. Does Mercer know where we are going?" "He knows where I should be going." "That is not the same answer." Bennett met her eyes. "No, it is not." They pulled away from the building without lights or sirens. Claire watched the rear window. The blue sedan did not follow, but a black sport utility vehicle turned onto the street 2 blocks later and remained behind them through 3 intersections. She could not tell whether it meant anything. Every dark window now looked like a warning. Her phone rang. "Dominic." Bennett glanced at the screen. "Answer it, but do not tell him our route." Claire accepted the call. "I am with Bennett, I know." She looked sharply through the rear window. "How?" "Daniel watched you leave." "Are you following us?" "No." "Then who is in the black sport utility vehicle?" Bennett turned in her seat. The officer checked the mirror. Dominic was silent for half a second. "License plate?" Claire read it aloud. "That vehicle belongs to a rental company," he said. "It was picked up this morning under a false identification." Bennett held out her hand for the phone. Claire switched to speaker instead. "How did you learn that so quickly?" Bennett asked. "I asked the right person." "That answer will not help you in court. I am not trying to help myself." The sport utility vehicle moved 1 lane closer. Bennett told the officer to turn right. He obeyed, then made another quick turn toward the riverfront. The vehicle stayed behind them. Claire's breathing shortened. She pressed her palm over the flash drive through the fabric of her coat. "They know we have it," she said. "They suspect," Dominic replied. "Do not let them confirm it. What are we supposed to do? Change destinations?" Bennett's expression hardened. "We are going to the federal building. Mercer knows that. You told us to go there. Before I learned he accessed your vehicle records 10 minutes ago." Bennett looked at the dashboard computer. Her jaw tightened. "He tracked my car." And when he saw it still parked outside Claire's building, he called someone else. The officer turned onto a wider avenue. The sport utility vehicle followed. "Where do you suggest?" Bennett asked. "St. Matthew's Hospital." Claire frowned. "Why a hospital?" "Federal agents are already there." "Why?" Dominic paused. "Because Ethan is there." Claire felt the air leave her lungs. "You said he was on his way to Cleveland." "He was." "Then why is he still in the city?" "He changed his mind after the bus reached the first stop." Anger rose through her fear. "You lied to me. I withheld a location because people were listening." "That is still a lie." "Yes." Dominic did not defend himself. The direct admission unsettled her. "Is Ethan hurt?" she asked. "No." He requested medical supervision before giving a statement. He believed it would keep Mercer from reaching him. Bennett leaned closer to the phone. "Which federal agency?" "The Federal Bureau of Investigation. Agent Samuel Grant, Financial Crimes Division." "I know Grant," Bennett said. "Can he be trusted?" Dominic asked. She looked at Claire. "More than Mercer." The officer changed course. The hospital stood 3 miles east, a tall glass building beside the highway. The black sport utility vehicle remained behind them until the next traffic light, where a delivery van moved between the 2 cars. When the light changed, the patrol car accelerated. They reached the hospital entrance without seeing the vehicle again. Agent Samuel Grant met them inside the emergency lobby. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with silver hair and an identification badge clipped to his belt. 2 other agents stood near the elevators. Bennett showed him the flash drive without removing it from Claire's pocket. "We need a secure room." Grant nodded once. "3rd floor." Claire followed them past the reception desk. The hospital smelled of coffee and disinfectant. Nurses moved between patients. Wheels rolled over polished tile. Everything was bright, public, ordinary. It felt safer than her apartment, but only by comparison. On the 3rd floor, Grant led them into a conference room with no windows. Claire placed the flash drive on the table. An agent sealed it inside a protective evidence container. We will create a verified copy before opening anything, Grant said. Nothing connects to the hospital network. Bennett asked, "Where is Ethan?" Grant looked at Claire. "He asked to speak with you." Her stomach tightened. "Why?" "He says you are the only person who can confirm he stored the envelopes at your address without your knowledge." Claire stared at the sealed drive. "Can he prove that?" "He claims the proof is on there." A door opened at the far end of the room. Ethan entered. He wore the same navy jacket from the parking lot, but he looked smaller than Claire remembered. Not injured, not powerful, just exhausted. He stopped when he saw her. "Claire." She did not move toward him. "You put those records in my home." Ethan lowered his eyes. "I thought nobody would connect them to you. You used my address. Mercer told me it was temporary." Bennett stepped forward. "You worked for Paul Mercer?" Ethan looked at her badge and nodded. "He paid me to move information between companies. I did not know what it was at first." "And later?" Grant asked. Ethan's face tightened. "Later, I knew enough to be afraid." Claire heard Dominic's voice in her memory. "Fear when it learns a routine." She looked at Ethan and finally understood that fear had lived in both of them, but only one of them had turned it into control. "Why did you leave with Dominic?" she asked. Ethan swallowed. "Because he showed me pictures of Mercer meeting the men who wanted the drive, and he threatened you." "No." Ethan looked toward the door as if Dominic might somehow be standing beyond it. "He told me the truth. He said I could keep running until I dragged you down with me, or I could finally admit what I had done." Claire's anger did not disappear. It became clearer, cleaner. "Why did you hurt me?" Ethan closed his eyes. "Because I was scared, and I wanted someone else to feel smaller than I did." No excuse followed, no request for forgiveness. For the first time, he named the choice as his own. Grant's phone vibrated. He read the message, then looked at Bennett. Mercer just entered the building. Bennett reached for her radio. Grant stopped her. "He is not alone." Claire looked at the sealed evidence container. The room that had felt secure a moment earlier now seemed fragile. Ethan stepped away from the door. "He knows the drive is here." The overhead lights flickered once, then went dark. Emergency lights glowed red along the walls. In the silence, Claire's phone rang. "Dominic's name appeared on the screen," she answered. His voice came low and certain through the darkness. "Do not let Mercer convince you that he came to save anyone." Claire held the phone close as the red emergency lights cast narrow shadows across the conference room. Agent Grant moved toward the door, but he did not open it. Detective Bennett stood beside the sealed evidence container, one hand resting near her radio. Ethan remained against the far wall, his face drained of color. "How do you know Mercer is here?" Claire asked. Dominic answered without hesitation. "Because the man driving the black sport utility vehicle entered the parking garage 2 minutes after him." Grant heard every word. "Who is the driver?" "A former city contractor named Calvin Ross. Mercer used his company to move confiscate financial records before they reached evidence storage." Grant exchanged a look with Bennett. "That would explain 3 missing case files," she said. The emergency lights flickered. Somewhere beyond the room, an alarm began pulsing in slow, measured tones. No panic, no screams. Only a recorded voice asking visitors to remain calm while the hospital investigated a temporary electrical failure. Claire looked at the sealed drive. "They caused this." "Probably," Dominic said. "But hospitals have independent emergency systems. They cannot keep the cameras down for long." Grant stepped closer to the phone. "Mr. Morello, where are you?" "Close enough. That is not useful." "It will be." Bennett looked toward the ceiling, listening. Footsteps approached from the hallway. Grant raised one hand, signaling everyone to remain quiet. A knock followed, 3 firm taps. "Federal security," a man called. "Agent Grant, we need to relocate your witness." Grant did not move. "Identification number?" Silence. Then the voice returned. "The elevators are being cleared. Open the door." Bennett whispered. "That is not hospital security." Ethan's breathing became shallow. Claire watched him struggle not to speak. The man outside knocked again. "Agent Grant, this floor is not secure." Grant answered through the door, "Then secure it." No response came. The footsteps retreated slowly, without urgency. Dominic's voice lowered. "They are testing whether you will surrender the drive without forcing a scene." Claire stared at the phone. "Why would they avoid a scene?" "Because Mercer survives by looking legitimate." Bennett nodded. "He cannot afford witnesses." The words brought Claire a strange kind of clarity. Mercer's power did not come from noise. It came from paperwork, badges, and rooms where people obeyed before asking questions. It was different from Dominic's power, but no less dangerous. "What do we do?" Claire asked. Grant pointed toward a second door at the back of the conference room. Service corridor, it connects to the records wing. Dominic spoke at once. Do not use it. Grant frowned. Why? Ross entered through the east stairwell. That corridor ends beside it. You have access to hospital security? I have someone watching the public feeds. Grant did not look convinced, but Bennett did. The west stairwell leads to the maternity wing, she said. More visitors, more cameras. Exactly, Dominic replied. Grant picked up the sealed evidence container. We move now. Claire followed Bennett into the hallway. The emergency lighting turned the polished floor a muted red. Nurses guided patients calmly toward waiting areas. A family stood beside a vending machine, holding paper cups and speaking in whispers. The ordinary details made Claire feel visible again. Safe people existed here. Witnesses existed here. They reached the west stairwell without interruption. On the second floor, the regular lights returned with a soft electrical hum. Phones rang at nursing stations. Computer screens blinked back to life. Grant checked his messages. The building cameras are on tightened. Mercer is in the main lobby showing his badge. Bennett looked at Claire. He will say he came to protect the evidence. And if we refuse? He will accuse us of obstructing an active investigation. Ethan gave a bitter laugh. That is how he does it. He makes the right choice sound illegal. They entered the maternity wing, where pale blue walls and framed photographs softened the hospital light. Grant led them into a family consultation room and locked the door. Another federal agent arrived through a side entrance less than a minute later. She carried a portable evidence scanner and introduced herself as Agent Naomi Pierce. Grant placed the sealed drive on the table. Create 2 verified copies, he said. One stays here, one goes to the regional office. Pierce began working immediately. Claire watched the progress bar move across the small screen. 10%, 20, 30. Her phone remained connected to Dominic. Are you still there? She asked. Yes. Why are you doing this? The question had been waiting since the grocery store. Dominic did not answer at once. Because I recognized what everyone else had chosen not to see. Claire touched the edge of her sleeve. That does not explain all of this. No, he said. It does not. Before she could ask again, the consultation room door shook beneath a hard knock. Mercer's voice came through from the hallway, calm and official. Detective Bennett, open the door. You are in possession of evidence connected to my case. Bennett stared at the handle. He sounds exactly like himself, she whispered. That is the problem. Mercer knocked again. Claire Dawson is not safe with these people. Dominic's voice came through the phone, steady enough to cut through the room. Ask him about file number 714. Claire looked at Bennett. She understood immediately and raised her voice. Mercer, what happened to file number 714? Silence followed. Pierce's screen reached 70%. Bennett stepped closer to the door. It disappeared from evidence storage 6 months ago. Your access code was the last one recorded. Mercer answered after a pause. Open the door and we can discuss this properly. That is not an answer. The progress bar reached 85%. Mercer's tone hardened, but only slightly. You are making a serious mistake. Claire felt fear rise, then settle. For years, those words had controlled her because they made certainty sound like guilt. This time she recognized the pattern. She stepped beside Bennett. No, Claire said clearly. We are finally asking the right question. The scanner chimed. 100%. Agent Pierce removed the first verified copy and handed it to Grant. At that exact moment, footsteps filled the hallway from both directions. Federal agents identified themselves. Mercer began speaking quickly, invoking his rank, his case, his authority. None of it opened the door. Grant looked at Claire. The files are secure. Through the phone, Dominic exhaled for the first time. Claire should have felt relieved. Instead, she looked at Ethan and saw fresh fear in his eyes. What is wrong? She asked. He stared at the sealed drive. There is something else on it. Grant turned toward him. What? Ethan swallowed. A list of every person Mercer paid. Bennett's face went still. Including who? Ethan looked directly at Claire. Including someone inside Morello's organization. For 1 second, nobody in the consultation room moved. Claire heard only the soft hum of the scanner and the distant murmur of voices beyond the locked door. Dominic remained silent on the phone. Ethan looked toward the floor as if the name he carried had become heavier than he expected. Agent Grant placed the verified copy inside a second evidence pouch. Who inside Morello's organization? He asked. Ethan rubbed his palms against his jeans. I never saw the full list. I only saw initials and payment dates. Bennett glanced at Claire's phone. What initials? Ethan swallowed. DP. Claire thought of Daniel Price standing outside her apartment, calm while strangers waited on the other side of the door. He had known where she lived. He had known about the flash drive. He had known every movement Dominic made on her behalf. Daniel, she whispered. Dominic's voice finally came through. Do not assume. Claire stared at the screen. His initials match. So do hundreds of others. He works for you. Yes, and he was at my apartment before the police arrived. Dominic did not argue. That silence frightened her more than denial. Grant motioned toward Pierce. Search the files for Daniel Price. Pierce began typing on the isolated computer. The progress wheel turned slowly. Outside the room, federal agents continued speaking with Mercer. His voice rose once, then became indistinct again. Claire imagined him presenting authority like a polished shield, certain that everyone would step aside. Pierce stopped typing. There are 4 payments connected to those initials, she said. Each one was routed through a shell company. Dominic asked, dates? Pierce read them aloud. The earliest was 18 months ago. The most recent had been 6 days earlier. That is impossible, Dominic said. For the first time, Claire heard something fracture beneath his control, not panic. Betrayal. Why? Grant asked. Daniel was with me on 2 of those dates. That does not clear him, Bennett said. A transfer does not require his presence. Claire leaned against the table. Her mind returned to the white envelope beneath her door and Daniel's careful message in the hallway. The danger is not that Ethan disappeared. The danger is that someone powerful expected him to stay silent. Had he been warning her or guiding her toward the exact place Mercer wanted the drive to go? Where is Daniel now? She asked. Dominic answered quickly. At your apartment building. Alone? Grant looked at Bennett. We need him brought in quietly. He will not come if Mercer is paying him, Bennett said. He will if Dominic asks. Claire heard Dominic inhale. I will call him. No, Grant said. Do not alert him until we know what the payments represent. Pierce opened another file. Rows of names and account numbers filled the screen. There is a note attached to the initials, she said. It says Harbor Project. Dominic went completely silent. Claire waited. What is the Harbor Project? She asked. A redevelopment contract, he said. 3 abandoned blocks near the river. She remembered the news report she had seen months earlier. Morello Development standing beside city officials, promising apartments, stores and public space. Mercer was involved, Bennett asked. He approved security clearances for several subcontractors. Pierce continued reading. The payments marked DP were not outgoing, they were deposits. Grant stepped closer to the monitor. Deposits into whose account? Pierce enlarged the file. An account opened under Daniel Price's name. Claire's stomach tightened. So he took the money. Not necessarily, Grant said. The account could have been created using stolen information. Ethan shook his head. Mercer did that before. He used real names because fake names raised questions. Bennett looked at him. How do you know? Because he opened one under Claire's name. The room seemed to tilt. Claire turned slowly. What did you say? Ethan's face folded with shame. I found it 3 weeks ago. You found an account in my name and said nothing. I thought I could fix it before you knew. Claire's voice came out quiet. You always thought silence was protection. Ethan looked away. I was wrong. Pierce searched again. A second account appeared on the screen. Claire Dawson. Deposits totaling $48,000 over 10 months. Every transaction connected to companies tied to the Harbor Project. Claire felt as though someone had placed a stranger's life over her own and expected the world to believe they were the same person. They made me look involved, she said. Bennett nodded grimly. If the project was investigated, the money trail would lead to you. Why me? Claire asked. Ethan answered before anyone else. Because your address was good. You worked at the grocery store. Nobody would think you had access to city contracts. Claire looked at him, except through you. Ethan closed his eyes. Yes. Dominic's voice lowered. Claire, listen to me. The account can be proven false. The bank records will show how it was opened. You do not know that. I know Mercer did not expect the drive to survive. She pressed a hand against the table to steady herself. And Daniel? I am finding out. A notification sounded on Dominic's end of the call. His breathing changed. Daniel just left your building. Grant asked, where is he going? He did not tell anyone. Bennett reached for her phone. Send me his vehicle information. Before Dominic could answer, Pierce raised one hand. There is more. She opened an audio file recovered from the drive. Static filled the small speakers, followed by Mercer's voice, calm, familiar. He was speaking to another man about the Harbor Project, the hidden accounts, and the need to keep Claire unaware. Then the second voice answered. Claire recognized it immediately. Daniel Price. Her chest tightened. The recording continued. Daniel said Claire could not be used again. Mercer laughed and reminded him who had paid his brother's medical bills. Daniel replied that the debt was finished. Mercer told him debts were never finished. The file ended. Silence settled over the room. Claire looked at the phone. He was working for Mercer. Dominic answered carefully. At first. And now? Now I do not know. Grant checked the timestamp. This recording is from 6 days ago. Bennett looked toward the locked door the same day as the latest payment. Dominic's voice became colder. Daniel did not take that money. Mercer sent it to remind him who owned the account. Claire remembered Daniel's calm face and the warning he had delivered. Not a threat, a confession without details. Her fear shifted again, becoming something more complicated. He was trying to help me, she said. Maybe, Grant replied, or maybe he was trying to protect himself. Claire looked at the verified evidence pouch. Where would he go now? Dominic did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice had lost none of its control, but something darker moved beneath it, the riverfront office. Why? Because every original harbor project contract is stored there. Grant stood straighter, and if Mercer knows the drive has been copied, he will want those contracts gone. Claire looked toward the door as the federal agents outside finally announced that Mercer was being detained for questioning. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Dominic spoke one final sentence that emptied the room of relief. Daniel is not going there to destroy the records, he said. He is going there because Mercer has his younger brother. Claire watched Agent Grant end the call with the Riverfront Security Office, his expression growing tighter with every unanswered ring. Beyond the consultation room, voices moved through the hospital corridor as federal agents escorted Mercer away from the maternity wing. He had entered wearing authority and left surrounded by questions, but Claire felt no relief. The sealed evidence pouches rested on the table. The truth had survived. Daniel's brother might not. What is his name? Claire asked. Dominic was still on the phone. Michael Price, 26 years old. He works nights at a printing company near the west side. How do you know Mercer has him? Daniel sent me a message. A pause followed. He apologized. Claire looked at Bennett. That is all. Dominic's voice lowered. He also sent the address of the riverfront office and told me not to follow. Grant reached for his coat. That means he expects Mercer's people to be watching. They will be, Dominic replied. The building has 3 entrances, an underground garage, and service access from the alley. Federal agents can secure it, Grant said. Not before Daniel arrives. Claire stood. He turned off his phone, Dominic said. He knows I can trace it. Ethan remained near the wall, listening with his arms folded tightly across his chest. Mercer used Michael before, he said. Everyone turned toward him. Not like this. He used his medical bills. Daniel's brother had surgery last year. Mercer arranged payment through one of the shell companies. Bennett's eyes narrowed, and Daniel paid him back with information. Ethan nodded. Building shed meetings, names of subcontractors. Nothing Daniel thought would hurt anyone. Until Claire's name appeared, Grant said. Ethan looked at her. That was when Daniel started copying Mercer's records. Claire remembered the warning in the hallway. Someone powerful expected Ethan to stay silent. Daniel had not been protecting Mercer. He had been trying to break free without knowing whom to trust. We need to go, she said. Bennett shook her head. You are staying here. Daniel went to my apartment twice. He protected me before he knew whether I would believe him. That does not make the riverfront safe. Nothing has been safe since Ethan used my address. Ethan lowered his gaze. Claire continued before fear could soften her voice. The contracts are tied to accounts in my name. If Daniel gets there and thinks destroying them is the only way to save his brother, I may be the only person who can stop him. Dominic spoke through the phone. No. Claire turned toward it. You do not decide for me. I'll write, he said at last. The answer surprised everyone, including Claire. But I can tell you the risk. Then tell me. Mercer's people want Daniel to remove the originals. Once he enters the archive room, they will likely lock the building down and force him to choose between the records and his brother. Can we reach Michael first? Grant asked. My people are checking the printing company, his apartment, and the hospital where he receives treatment. He is not at any of them. Bennett looked at the clock. How long until Daniel reaches the riverfront? 7 minutes. Grant issued instructions to the agents outside. Within moments, the consultation room emptied into controlled motion. Pierce stayed with Ethan and the evidence. Bennett led Claire toward a service elevator, while Grant coordinated federal vehicles from his phone. Dominic remained on the line. I will meet you there, he said. I thought you were already close. I was close to the hospital. Claire stepped into the elevator with Bennett and Grant. Why? Because I did not trust Mercer to enter alone. You were watching us. I was watching him. The elevator descended. Claire studied her reflection in the steel doors. Her sweater sleeves still covered the fading marks on her wrist. Yesterday she had believed those marks were the most dangerous secret in her life. Now her name was tied to hidden accounts, a federal investigation, and a man she barely knew who seemed to see danger before it arrived. "Dominic," she said, "when this is over you will tell me everything." His reply came without delay. "Yes, no more half-truths, no more." The elevator opened into the parking garage. Two federal vehicles waited with engines running. Claire entered the back seat beside Bennett. Grant took the front. They left the hospital without sirens, heading south toward the river. Downtown buildings gave way to old warehouses and construction cranes. The sky had darkened again, low clouds gathering over the water. Dominic's voice guided Grant through the safest route. "Do not use Harbor Avenue. Take Mason Street, then enter from the public plaza." "Why?" Grant asked. "The underground bridge cameras went offline 4 minutes ago." Bennett looked at Claire. "Mercer planned this before entering the hospital. He planned several outcomes," Dominic said. "He only needed one to work." They reached the Morello development site in 11 minutes. The riverfront office occupied the ground floor of a renovated brick warehouse, surrounded by fencing and half-finished sidewalks. A black sedan waited near the plaza. Dominic stood beside it in the same charcoal coat he had worn at the grocery store. Two men remained several steps behind him. He looked toward Claire as she exited the federal vehicle. His gaze moved over her quickly, confirming she was safe, then settled on Grant. "Daniel entered through the west door 3 minutes ago," he said. "Is Michael inside?" Claire asked. "We do not know." Grant's agents spread out around the building. No one raised a weapon, no one shouted. The plaza remained quiet except for wind moving across the river and the distant sound of construction equipment. Dominic handed Grant a key card. "This opens the public offices. The archive room requires a separate code. Do you have it? Daniel changed it this morning." They entered through the west door. The lobby lights were on, but the reception desk was empty. A cup of coffee sat beside a keyboard, still warm. Claire followed Dominic down a long corridor lined with architectural drawings. He moved with controlled urgency, never touching her, never ordering her back. Bennett stayed close on Claire's other side. At the end of the corridor, they found Daniel standing outside the archive room. His coat was gone. His white shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows. In one hand, he held a folder. In the other, a phone. He looked exhausted. "Do not come closer," he said. Dominic stopped 10 feet away. "Where is Michael?" "They will release him when I bring the original contracts." "They will not," Dominic said. Daniel's face tightened. "I have to believe they will." "No," Claire said. Daniel looked at her, startled. "You believed Mercer's promises before. What did they cost you?" His eyes dropped. "Too much, then do not pay him again with the truth." Daniel looked toward the archive door. "You do not understand. He sent me a recording of Michael's voice." "Did Michael say where he was?" Grant asked. Dominic held out his hand. "Give me the phone." Daniel hesitated, then passed it over. Dominic played the recording through the speaker. Michael's voice sounded tired but calm. He said he was safe and asked Daniel to follow instructions. Claire listened closely. Behind the voice came a repeated metallic chime, followed by a distant announcement. She had heard that sound before. "That is a train station," she said. Bennett looked at her. "How can you tell the chime? Union Station uses it before platform announcements." Grant immediately called his field office. Daniel stared at Claire as hope and fear collided across his face. Dominic replayed the recording. This time, they heard the announcement more clearly. "A delayed northbound train, platform 6. Grant spoke rapidly into his phone, directing agents toward Union Station. Daniel pressed a hand over his mouth. "Mercer never had him at the riverfront." "He only needed you to believe he did," Dominic said. A notification appeared on Daniel's phone. He read it and went pale. "They know you are here." The archive room door clicked behind him. The electronic lock had opened remotely. Inside, the lights came on one row at a time, revealing shelves of original contracts. At the far end of the room, a printer started by itself. One sheet emerged. Daniel picked it up. 3 words had been printed across the page. "Choose your brother." Claire looked at the contracts, then at Daniel. "That is not a choice," she said. "It is the same cage with a different lock." Dominic stepped forward once. "Michael is no longer your debt." Grant's phone rang. He answered, listened, then looked directly at Daniel. They found your brother at Union Station. He is safe. Daniel closed his eyes. The page slipped from his hand and landed on the floor. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then a sharp electronic tone sounded from the archive room. Red warning lights appeared above the shelves. Dominic looked toward the control panel. The building system has been triggered. Bennett asked, "What system?" "Automatic document disposal." The archive door began sliding shut. Claire saw the original harbor contracts beyond it, with papers that could clear her name and expose every hidden account. Dominic reached for the emergency control, but the panel flashed access denied. Daniel stared at the narrowing doorway. "Mercer built a second way to erase everything," he said, "and it just activated." The archive door moved with slow mechanical certainty, narrowing the opening inch by inch. Red warning lights pulsed above the shelves, and a low alarm spread through the corridor. Dominic reached the control panel first, but every command returned the same message. Access. Daniel dropped to one knee beside the wall unit and pulled open a narrow service cover. "Mercer added an override," he said. "The original system was only designed to lock the room during a fire." Grant stepped closer. "What does disposal mean?" "The storage racks seal, the documents are transferred into locked destruction bins, and the bins are moved to the basement compactor." Claire looked through the shrinking doorway. Rows of white boxes sat beneath cold ceiling lights. Somewhere among them were contracts carrying her name, payment records tied to false accounts, and signatures that could prove she had been used. "How long?" she asked. Daniel studied the panel. "Less than 4 minutes." Bennett called the federal team outside and ordered them to secure the basement loading area. Grant tried the archive key card again. Nothing happened. Dominic looked at Daniel. "There must be a manual release inside the room. Then someone goes in." Bennett immediately shook her head. "The door could lock completely." Daniel pointed toward the far wall beyond the shelves. "There is an emergency lever beside the ventilation controls. It should stop the transfer sequence." The opening had narrowed to less than 3 feet. Dominic removed his coat and handed it to one of his men. Claire knew what he intended before he moved. "No," she said. He turned toward her. "There is no time." "Then let Daniel go. He knows the room." Daniel stood. "I will." Dominic blocked him with one arm. "Your brother was just found. You are not walking into another trap Mercer built for you. Those records exist because I waited too long to speak, and they will survive because you are going to tell Grant how the system works." Dominic stepped through the narrowing opening sideways. Claire caught his sleeve. He stopped. The alarm continued around them, steady and indifferent. "You said no more half-truths," she said. "That includes disappearing behind a door and expecting me to trust the outcome." His eyes held hers. Up close, the control in his face looked less like fearlessness and more like discipline. "Then watch me come back," he said. He slipped inside. The door continued closing. Daniel moved to the panel, calling instructions through the gap. "Straight ahead, then left at the second row. The lever is mounted beside a yellow pipe." Dominic disappeared between the shelves. Claire could hear his footsteps crossing the concrete floor. The system activated with a heavy mechanical hum. Metal tracks beneath the storage racks began moving. Boxes shifted toward the rear wall, one section at a time. Daniel said. Grant's phone rang. He listened, then covered the microphone. "The basement team found the destruction bins, but the controls are locked from this floor." Bennett looked through the doorway. "Morello, can you see the lever?" Dominic's voice came from deep inside the room. "Not yet." The opening narrowed to 18 inches. Daniel reached into the service panel and began separating wires, careful not to touch 2 at once. Claire watched his hands. They shook, but he kept working. "What happens when the door closes?" she asked. "The room seals until the cycle ends." "How long is that?" 40 minutes, the words settled heavily. 40 minutes inside a sealed archive while machinery moved tons of storage racks through the room. Claire pushed the image away before it could take shape. "There," Dominic called. A metallic sound followed. Nothing changed. The warning lights continued flashing. "Pull down and turn clockwise." Another sound echoed from inside. The moving racks slowed, then resumed. "It is locked," Dominic said. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "Mercer replaced the release." Grant asked. "Can we cut power to the building?" "Not without shutting down the fire systems in the occupied construction offices next door," Daniel replied. Claire looked at the control panel. Above the access screen was a small camera lens. Mercer had designed the system to receive instructions remotely. He had opened the archive door to lure Daniel inside, then activated the disposal sequence once federal agents arrived. He expected panic. He expected them to choose speed over thought. Claire stepped closer to the camera. "Mercer needs proof," she said. Bennett looked at her. Proof of what? That the records are destroyed. Daniel stared at the lens. The system sends a completion image to a remote server. Claire turned toward Grant. Can Agent Pierce send something through the account tied to my name? What kind of a transfer request? Make it look like the money is being moved out of the harbor accounts. Dominic's voice came through the narrowing doorway. Claire, explain. Mercer built this to erase evidence, but he also built those accounts to protect money. If he thinks the records are disappearing while the money is being taken, he may stop the system long enough to check. Grant understood first. He called Pierce and spoke rapidly. The archive opening was now less than a foot wide. Claire could no longer see past the first row of shelves. Daniel watched the timer on the panel. 1 minute and 12 seconds. Pierce answered through Grant's speaker. I can trigger a false transfer alert, but I need a destination. Claire looked at Dominic's coat in the hands of the man behind her. Send it to Morello Development. Bennett frowned. That will make Dominic look involved. Mercer already wants that. He will believe it. From inside the archive, Dominic said, Do it. Pierce initiated the alert. 10 seconds passed. The door narrowed further. Claire heard Dominic moving toward it, but the shifting racks blocked his direct path. 38 seconds remained. Daniel whispered, Come on. The control panel suddenly flashed. Remote administrator connected. The machinery stopped. The archive door froze with 7 inches left open. Everyone remained silent. A new message appeared on the screen. Transfer cancelled. Confirm account security. Grant gave Pierce the signal. She replied through the false banking channel that confirmation required of all automated disposal systems. The panel blinked once, then the red lights turned amber. The archive door began to reopen. Claire did not breathe until Dominic appeared between the shelves. Dust marked one shoulder of his white shirt, but he was steady. He stepped into the corridor as the door reached full width. Behind him, the boxes remained on their racks. Daniel leaned against the wall, relief weakening his knees. Bennett called the basement team and confirmed that every destruction bin had stopped. Grant looked at the panel. Mercer just exposed his remote access credentials. Pierce's voice came through the phone. We have the server location and the administrator log. Claire looked at Dominic. So it is over? He studied the archive room before answering. The records are safe. Michael is safe. Mercer is in custody. Grant nodded. And the digital evidence links him to the accounts, the missing files, and the disposal system. Daniel removed a small key from his pocket and placed it in Grant's hand. This opens the cabinet containing the original payment ledgers. Grant accepted it. Then we finally have the full chain. Relief moved through the corridor, quiet and cautious. Claire wanted to believe the danger had ended. Then Dominic looked toward Daniel. There is still one question. Daniel lifted his eyes. Why did Mercer know Claire would be at Harper's Market last night? Claire felt the relief vanish. Ethan had known where she shopped. Mercer had access to her address. But neither explanation accounted for Dominic's arrival at the exact aisle. At the exact moment, her sleeve slipped back. Daniel's face changed. He did not know she would be there, he said. You did. Claire turned toward Dominic. The amber light from the archive panel crossed his face. He did not deny it. Why were you watching me before we met? She asked. Dominic held her gaze as the last hidden door between them opened. Because 3 weeks ago, your name appeared on a list of people Mercer planned to silence. Claire stared at Dominic while the amber warning light washed over the corridor. Around them, federal agents moved between the archive room and the lobby, securing contracts, photographing control panels, and carrying sealed evidence cases toward the waiting vehicles. Their voices sounded distant. The only thing Claire could hear clearly was the sentence he had just spoken. Her name had been on a list. 3 weeks, she said. Dominic did not look away. Yes, you knew I was in danger for 3 weeks and you said nothing. I did not know why Mercer had chosen you. But you knew enough to watch me. Yes, the direct answer struck harder than an excuse. Claire folded her arms, covering the bruises beneath her sleeves. Was the grocery store an accident? Dominic paused. That hesitation answered before he did. No. Daniel looked down. Bennett and Grant remained near the archive entrance, close enough to listen but far enough to allow the truth to unfold. Claire felt exposed in a way the false bank accounts had never managed. Those accounts had stolen her name. Dominic had stolen her belief that their first meeting belonged to chance. How long had your people been following me, she asked. 11 days. My apartment watched from the street. My work? Only when Mercer's associates were nearby. Her voice sharpened. That is not protection when the person being protected does not know it is happening. Dominic accepted the words without flinching. You are right. Stop saying that as if agreement repairs anything. His jaw tightened. For the first time since she had met him, control seemed to cost him something. I was trying to identify the threat before I brought fear into your life. Claire looked toward the archive room filled with evidence bearing her name. Fear was already in my life. You just decided I could not be trusted with the truth. I decided Mercer would move faster if he learned you had been warned. So you made the decision for me. Yes, no defense, no polished explanation, only the fact. Claire wanted anger because anger was clean. Instead, she felt disappointment, and disappointment reached deeper. Why were you at Harper's Market? She asked. Dominic glanced toward Daniel, then back to her. One of Mercer's men had been outside your apartment that afternoon. You left before my security team could speak with you. Daniel tracked your car to the store. Claire looked at Daniel. He nodded once. I told Dominic you were alone, he said, and that Ethan's truck had entered the lot. Dominic continued. I came because I believed Ethan might be delivering the drive to Mercer, but he came for me, yes. Claire remembered Ethan beside his truck, telling her that one bad night should not erase 3 years. She remembered the black sedan under the broken street lamp. Dominic had not appeared because fate placed him near the apples. He had appeared because he had already placed himself near her life. When you saw my wrist, she said, were you surprised? Something changed in his eyes. Yes, you knew about the accounts, the list, and Ethan's connection to Mercer. You did not know about that? No, his voice became quieter. I knew someone had used your name. I did not know someone had taught you to hide pain as though it belonged to you. The corridor seemed to narrow. Claire resented how easily he saw what she had spent years avoiding. Then you took Ethan away. I asked him to enter the car, and if he had refused? Grant shifted slightly, but Dominic answered before anyone intervened. I would have called Agent Grant and given him the evidence I already had. Claire searched his face. You would not have forced him. No, you expect me to believe that. I expect nothing from you now. The words were controlled, but they carried weight. Ethan entered because I showed him photographs of Mercer's associates outside your building. I showed him the false account opened in your name. Then I told him he could continue protecting himself, or he could protect you once. Claire looked toward Daniel. Did you know? I knew Dominic planned to confront him, Daniel said. I did not know Ethan would agree to cooperate. Bennett stepped closer. The grocery store camera confirms Ethan entered the sedan without physical pressure. His statement confirms the same. Claire nodded. But confirmation did not erase the secret. Why did you not tell me after he left? She asked Dominic. Because Mercer was listening through a tracking application on Ethan's phone. Because I did not know whether your apartment had been compromised. Because every hour Ethan remained missing made Mercer believe the drive was still with him instead of you. Those are reasons. Claire held his gaze. They are not permission. Dominic lowered his head once. No, they are not. Outside the windows. Clouds moved over the river, turning the water dark silver. Claire realized how tired she was. Less than 24 hours had passed since she entered the grocery store for bread and coffee. Since then, strangers had entered her home. Federal agents had copied evidence tied to her identity, and a man with enough power to command entire rooms had admitted that he had watched her without her knowledge. What else have you kept from me? She asked. Dominic reached inside his shirt pocket and removed a folded photograph. He handed it to her. Claire opened it carefully. The image showed a younger woman standing outside a small white house. Dark hair, serious eyes. One hand rested over the opposite wrist. Claire looked up. Who is she? My mother. She left my father when I was 16. She had hidden what was happening for years. Claire looked again at the woman's covered wrist. Did you help her? Too late. No details followed, and none were needed. The regret in his voice filled the space. After she left, I promised myself I would never ignore that kind of fear again. I built my life around control because control felt safer than helplessness. Claire folded the photograph along its existing crease. And now you control other people for their own good. His eyes lowered briefly. Sometimes that is not redemption, no. Dominic met her gaze again. It is the flaw I kept calling protection. The honesty did not absolve him. It did something more difficult. It made him human. Grant approached with a sealed folder. We found the original bank authorization forms, he said. The signatures were digitally copied from Claire's employment records. Her name can be cleared. Claire released a breath she had been holding for hours. How long? The federal filing starts today. We will provide written confirmation to the bank, your employer, and the credit agencies. Mercer's access logs connect him directly to the accounts. Bennett added, his command history also connects him to the missing evidence files in the archive system. He will not return to duty. And Daniel? Claire asked. Grant looked toward him. His cooperation and the recordings matter. The payments will be investigated, but the evidence supports coercion. Daniel's shoulders lowered for the first time. His phone rang. He answered, listened, and covered his eyes with one hand. Michael is with the agents, he said. He is safe. The corridor softened with relief, but Claire kept looking at Dominic. You promised no more half-truths. I did. Then understand what that means. You do not follow me. You do not send people to watch my home. You do not decide what I can handle. Every word landed between them like a line drawn in permanent ink. Dominic nodded. Understood. And I am not something you own because you helped me. His expression changed, not with offense, but recognition. Claire, you belong only to yourself. The answer steadied something inside her. I need distance from you. His hand closed around the folded image. You will have it. No arguments? No secret protection? He looked toward Grant and Bennett. Federal protection is already being arranged. I will not interfere. Claire studied him, searching for resistance. There was none. Power had always seemed to mean never stepping back. Dominic Morello made it look like something else when he moved aside and cleared her path toward the exit. Bennett walked with Claire through the lobby. Outside, the wind had weakened and afternoon light broke through the clouds above the river. Federal vehicles lined the curb. Daniel stood near an agent, waiting to be taken to his brother. Grant spoke with Pierce beside the evidence cases. The machinery of truth had finally begun moving in the right direction. Claire reached the top of the plaza steps before turning around. Dominic remained inside the glass doors. He did not follow. He did not signal. He simply stood beneath the lobby lights with his mother's photograph in one hand, honoring the first boundary she had ever given him. Claire faced the river again. For years she had mistaken silence for peace and endurance for loyalty. Now she understood that safety was not the absence of shouting. It was the presence of choice. Her phone vibrated inside her pocket. The screen showed Megan's name. Claire answered. They told me he is alive, Megan said. They said he is cooperating. He is. Is he coming home? Claire looked back once more at the building where every hidden record was being brought into the light. No, she said. He is finally going to face what he did. After the call ended, Bennett opened the passenger door of an unmarked federal car. Claire stepped toward it, then stopped when Grant hurried from the lobby holding one final evidence sheet. Claire, he called. There is something you need to see. She took the page. It was the list Dominic had mentioned, the list of people Mercer planned to silence. Her name appeared near the bottom. Beside it was a scheduled date, tomorrow. Beneath her name, however, another had been added in different handwriting, Dominic Morello. Claire looked through the glass doors. Dominic was no longer watching her. He was staring at his phone, his face completely still. Across the plaza, a black car pulled away from the curb and disappeared toward Harbor Avenue. Grant read the final line on the page and lowered his voice. Mercer was never the only person giving orders. Claire looked from the evidence sheet to the glass doors, but Dominic had already moved away from the lobby. Grant spoke into his phone and ordered agents to stop the black car before it reached Harbor Avenue. Bennett scanned the plaza, her posture changing from relief to readiness. Who added his name? Claire asked. Grant pointed to the different handwriting. We do not know yet. Daniel stepped closer, his face still pale from the call with his brother. I have seen that handwriting before. Everyone turned toward him. Where? Bennett asked. On contract notes from Victor Hale. Dominic reappeared inside the lobby and pushed through the doors. The wind caught the edge of his white shirt. City Commissioner Victor Hale? Grant asked. Daniel nodded. He approved the harbor project before Mercer started moving the money. Claire remembered Hale from local television, silver hair, calm smile, a man who spoke about renewal and public trust while standing beside Dominic at ribbon cuttings. Was he Mercer's superior? She asked. Not officially, he did not need to be. Mercer protected the accounts. Hale decided where the money went. Dominic reached them. His expression was composed, but Claire saw tension in the way he held his phone. The car belongs to Hale's office, he said. Federal agents are stopping it now. Grant's phone rang almost immediately. He listened, then looked toward the river. The driver is alone. Hale is not in the vehicle. Bennett asked, then where is he? Dominic glanced toward the upper floors of the warehouse. His private office. Claire followed his gaze. Here, Morello Development leased him temporary space during the project negotiations. Grant motioned to the agents near the entrance. Secure every exit. Dominic stopped him. Hale has access to the building controls. If he sees a federal team moving upstairs, he may erase the remaining server records. We already have the drive, Grant said. The drive proves the false accounts. It may not prove Hale gave the orders. Daniel pointed toward the paper in Claire's hand. That list came from his office. Mercer never wrote notes by hand. Claire studied the scheduled date beside her name, tomorrow. Beneath it, Dominic's name. Why would Hale target Dominic? Because I stopped the harbor payments 3 weeks ago, Dominic said. I found irregular transfers and froze the project accounts, and that is when my name appeared on the list, Claire said. Yes, so Hale believed I could connect you to the missing money, or be used to force me to reopen the accounts. Claire looked at him. Did you know that? Not until today. Grant checked the lobby cameras on a security tablet. Hale's office is on the 4th floor. No movement in the hall. Bennett said, he may already be gone. Daniel shook his head. His private elevator requires a code, and the underground garage is locked down. Claire looked toward the elevator bank. Then we go up quietly. Dominic's eyes met hers. You are not going. The old anger returned immediately. You promised not to decide for me. I promised not to control your life. I did not promise to pretend danger is harmless. Then tell me the risk and let me choose. He held her gaze for a long moment. Hale may try to make you doubt the evidence. He may claim I created the accounts, manipulated Ethan, and used Mercer as a shield. He will sound reasonable. So did Ethan. Claire folded the paper and placed it in her pocket. I know what reasonable fear sounds like now. Grant allowed only Claire, Bennett, Dominic, and 2 federal agents into the service elevator. Daniel remained downstairs to help Pierce identify the contract files. The elevator rose without music. Claire watched the numbers change above the door, 2, 3, 4. Dominic stood beside her without touching her. His silence no longer felt like power. It felt like restraint. When the doors opened, the hallway was bright and empty. At the far end, a glass office overlooked the river. Victor Hale sat behind a wide desk with both hands visible. He wore a navy suit and a pale blue tie. A cup of coffee rested beside him. He looked as if he had been expecting a committee meeting. Agent Grant, he said when they entered. This is unnecessary. Grant showed his badge. Commissioner Hale, step away from the desk. Hale smiled faintly. You are relying on evidence provided by Dominic Morello. That should concern you. Claire felt Dominic become still beside her. Hale looked directly at her. Miss Dawson, I am sorry you were drawn into this. Mr. Morello has a history of turning vulnerable people into loyal witnesses. The words were chosen carefully. Not openly cruel. Claire understood the design at once. He wanted her to feel ashamed of needing help. Did you open an account in my name? She asked. Hale's smile weakened. I authorized no such thing. Did you tell Mercer to use my address? Detective Mercer acted independently. Bennett stepped forward. He says otherwise. Hale's eyes flicked toward her. A frightened man in custody will say anything. Grant placed a copy of the handwritten list on the desk. Is this your handwriting? Hale glanced at it. I make notes on dozens of documents. You scheduled Claire Dawson for tomorrow, Grant said. What was supposed to happen tomorrow? Hale leaned back. Perhaps ask Morello. He had been watching her for nearly 2 weeks. Claire felt the accusation move through the room, searching for a place to land. She looked at Dominic. He did not defend himself. He let her decide what mattered. That choice gave her the answer Hale could not understand. Dominic told me the truth, she said. Late but completely. Can you do the same? Hale's face changed for the first time. You believe a man like him? I believe records. I believe access logs. I believe the account opened with my stolen signature. And I believe people who accept responsibility without blaming the person they used. Silence followed. Grant moved around the desk. Hale reached toward the coffee cup, but Bennett noticed the small device beneath it. Do not touch that. One federal agent lifted the cup and revealed a remote control with a single illuminated button. Grant placed it in an evidence bag. What does it activate? Hale said nothing. Dominic crossed to the window and looked down toward the riverfront plaza. The private server room, he said. It is beneath this office, Grant called Pierce. She confirmed that a hidden network had just appeared on the building scan. Agents opened a concealed door behind a wall panel and found the original Harbor Project server still running. Every transfer order, every message to Mercer, every instruction involving Claire and Dominic remained intact. Hale's calm finally broke. He stood too quickly, then stopped when the agents moved closer. You have no idea what Morello is, he said to Claire. She looked at Dominic. I know he is not innocent. Dominic accepted the words. I also know he stepped back when I asked him to. Claire turned toward Hale. You never stepped back. You only found quieter ways to take. Grant informed Hale that he was under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, obstruction, and misuse of public office. No one shouted, no one resisted. Hale's authority disappeared not in a dramatic moment, but in the soft click of evidence bags closing around the things he had trusted to keep him untouchable. An hour later, Claire stood alone on the riverfront terrace. Federal agents filled the floors below, copying servers and sealing records. The clouds had opened, revealing a narrow band of gold over the water. Dominic joined her but stopped several feet away. Hale's files clear your name completely, he said. Grant says the banks will reverse every account within 48 hours. And Ethan, he's signed a cooperation agreement. He will face charges for his part, but he will testify. Daniel? Protected witness status for him and Michael if they accept it. Claire nodded. Every knot was loosening, one truth at a time. Dominic looked toward the river. You asked for distance. I did. I will still honor it. Claire studied him. Do you want to? No. The honesty was immediate, but wanting something does not make it mine. She felt the words settle inside her. I am not ready to trust you, I know. And I do not know what you are outside this crisis. Then do not decide today. Claire looked at the fading marks beneath her sleeve. Tomorrow was the date on Hale's list. It was. I spent years believing survival meant waiting for the next bad thing. Dominic said nothing. He did not fill her silence or claim her fear. Claire stepped closer, not because he asked, but because she chose to. Tomorrow, I am going back to Harper's Market, she said. I still need coffee. Something softened in his face. Do you want company? Claire looked at the river, then back at him. You may ask me tomorrow. The next morning. Claire woke before her alarm. For several seconds she did not remember why the room felt different. Then she saw the federal protection notice on the kitchen counter, the sealed envelope from Agent Grant, and Dominic's business card resting beside her keys. The apartment was quiet. No footsteps in the hallway, no truck waiting near the curb, no message demanding an explanation. She stood at the window and watched sunlight reach the brick buildings across the street. Yesterday had been the date Victor Hale selected for her silence. Today arrived anyway. At 8:30, Bennett called to confirm that Hale and Mercer remained in federal custody. The Harbor accounts had been frozen. Claire's bank and employer had received official notice that her identity had been used without her knowledge. Ethan had completed his first formal statement. Daniel and Michael had entered temporary federal protection. Every fact sounded like a door being unlocked. You do not have to return to work yet, Bennett said. Your manager approved paid leave, I know. Claire looked at the coffee container on her counter. Empty, but I need to do one ordinary thing. Harper's Market opened beneath a clear blue sky. Claire parked near the front instead of choosing the space closest to the exit. 2 federal agents remained across the street in an unmarked vehicle. Their presence was visible because she had agreed to it. That difference mattered. Inside, shopping carts rattled across the tile. A child asked for cereal. Someone laughed near the bakery. The store had not changed, yet Claire felt as though she had returned after years away. She moved through the produce section slowly. The apple display stood exactly where it had before. She remembered Dominic beside it, dressed too carefully for a grocery store, pretending chance had brought him into her aisle. The memory still carried anger. It also carried the moment he noticed what everyone else had ignored. Claire reached for a bag of coffee. That brand is terrible. She turned. Dominic stood at the end of the aisle wearing a dark overcoat and no visible security. He had stopped more than 12 feet away. He did not approach. You followed me, she said. No. He lifted one hand slightly. Agent Grant told me you were here after I asked whether it was safe to call you. Claire glanced toward the front windows. And instead of calling, I came to ask in person. He looked tired. The sharpness in his expression remained, but the certainty did not. May I walk with you? Claire studied him. Yesterday, he had commanded buildings, vehicles, and men who moved when he spoke. Today, he waited beside a shelf of canned soup for permission to take a few steps. You may, she said. Dominic joined her without taking the cart. Claire chose coffee, bread, and a carton of eggs. He did not comment on the federal agents outside. He did not ask whether she had slept. He allowed the ordinary silence to remain ordinary. Near the dairy case, Claire said, Grant told me the files contain records from projects before Harbor. Dominic's gaze settled on the rows of glass doors. They do. Some involve your companies. Yes. Were they legal? He answered carefully. Some were designed to avoid rules I believed were written for people without power. Claire placed a quart of milk into the cart. That sounds like a polished way of saying no. Then, no, she appreciated the absence of denial. What happens now? My attorneys are turning over the records. Federal investigators will decide what belongs to Hale, what belongs to Mercer, and what belongs to me. You could face charges. Yes. Dominic said it without lowering his voice. Are you afraid? Of losing control? Yes. Of answering for my choices? No. Claire looked at him. That sounds almost noble. It is not. It is late. They continued toward the checkout lanes. Claire remembered the man who had once told Ethan he had a choice. Dominic had offered choices to everyone except himself. Now the truth had left him no protected exit. Why turn everything over? She asked. You already gave Grant enough to clear my name. Dominic stopped beside a display of flowers. Because I spent years believing power could correct what power damaged. Hale proved where that belief leads when nobody accepts a boundary. He looked at her wrist. The marks had faded to pale yellow beneath the skin. You told me protection without permission becomes control. I cannot ask you to believe I am different while hiding behind the same excuse. Claire felt something quiet shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not trust. A beginning did not need to pretend it was an ending. At the register, the cashier recognized Claire and asked whether she had been sick. Claire smiled. Something like that. Dominic stood behind the cart while she paid. He did not reach for his wallet. He did not turn a small purchase into a display of power. Outside, cold air carried the smell of rain from somewhere beyond the city. Dominic took one grocery bag only after Claire handed it to him. They walked toward her car. Daniel asked to speak with you, he said. Not today. I will tell him. Ethan, he wrote you a letter. Claire unlocked the trunk. I am not ready for that either. Understood. He placed the bag inside and stepped back. Across the street, the federal agents remained in their vehicle. Claire closed the trunk. What happens to Morello Development? The board will appoint an independent director during the investigation. And what happens to you? For the first time in a long time, I do not know. Dominic looked toward the passing traffic. I may lose contracts, property, influence. Does that frighten you more than prison? No. He turned back to her. Losing the chance to become someone you could trust frightens me more. The words might once have sounded like possession disguised as devotion. Now he offered them without asking her to answer. Claire leaned against the car door. You cannot build your redemption around me, I know. You cannot become better only because you want me to stay. I know. Then why say it? Dominic took a slow breath. Honesty should not depend on reward. Claire looked at the grocery store behind him. A week ago, she would have believed a powerful man changed the world by giving orders. Now she understood that the harder act was accepting an answer he could not control. I still need distance, she said. You will have it. But distance is not the same as goodbye. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. No, it is not. Claire opened the driver's door, then paused. There is a coffee shop on Mason Street. Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. Dominic remained still. I am giving you permission to ask. For the first time, she saw him smile without calculation. Small, careful, human. Claire Dawson, may I have coffee with you on Saturday morning? She considered the question longer than necessary, because choice deserved to be felt. Yes, Dominic stepped away from the car. He did not open her door. He did not tell her to call when she arrived home. He trusted the boundary she had drawn and the strength she had reclaimed. Claire drove from the parking lot beneath a sky beginning to brighten. In the rearview mirror, Dominic remained on the sidewalk, holding nothing that belonged to her. The city still knew his name. Men still moved when he entered a room, but he no longer ruled her silence. She had found her voice, and the first thing it taught him was that love was not a claim. It was a question asked with enough courage to accept the answer.